What up, what up, what up? It's your boy Brooklyn's Own in the house. I got my co-host.
Hey, Phoenix in the house.
So what's good, Phoenix? Let's talk about this topic we got.
Misplaced loyalty.
Misplaced loyalty. Okay. Sounds like a very deep and in-depth topic, so let's get into it. What you got?
All right. First thing is ignoring the signs in the early stages of the relationship and continuing because of the trauma from your past relationship not dealt with.
Now that was a lot.
We can say it again. We can break it down.
Can you slow it down and break it down? So, misplaced loyalty is the topic.
Right. Ignoring the signs
Okay.
in the early stages of the relationship.
Mm.
Whether you want to call them red flags, warning signs.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, continuing because you have some undealt with issues or trauma from your past relationship that you have not dealt with, but you're seeing in your new relationship.
Okay. Wow. That's very intense.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the reasons why people do that and end up in misplaced loyalty in their relationships.
Wow. I like that topic, misplaced loyalty. So let's jump right into it. Let's jump right into misplaced loyalty. So what do you got?
All right. So one of the reasons is that they need to replace the family they lost. If, say, they were in a previous relationship.
Okay.
And is this something that you might want to, harp on or add to?
Well, yeah, I mean, I could speak to that. I mean, so let's get into misplaced loyalty. So in the beginning, when men and women meet, there's a connection, and whatever that connection is, and what the reason for that connection is, be it money, be it
Physical attraction.
Whatever that connection or attraction is, that's the inception of the relationship. And where that goes, simply we have to unpack the reasons why we stay in these long-term relationships for certain reasons.
Well, specifically when we start seeing signs in the early stages of the relationship, whether it be a few months down the line, a year or so, when, that was odd. I didn't really like the way he or she did that, or you just start getting a sense of something's amiss.
Yeah.
In the relationship, but you continue to ignore it for a number of reasons.
So here's a great reason to ignore a red flag in a relationship. Let's just say you want a kid.
Okay.
Let's just say you have kids already and it didn't work out. You got divorced, or it didn't work out in your previous relationship, and you meet someone that's the total opposite of the relationship you just left. And you're so caught up in the fact that this new person, man or woman, is completely different from your past relationship. And a lot of times, men and women want to restart. They want to press the restart button. And that can end up in a child. It can end up in the form of marriage, engagement. You just want what you didn't get in your last relationship.
I see. That's a valid point.
And here's what happens. When men and women do that, instead of relating to each other as human beings, most of the time what men and women do is we create our own fantasy in our heads because we're getting what we think we want or what we think we need. I need to be engaged. I need to get married so I can stunt in front of all my church folks. Or I need a child because that crazy man or crazy woman wouldn't let me raise my child. And you end up with an individual that's not for you.
Exactly. And to add to that, what you start doing is, because you want this relationship to not end like the last relationship, you're willing to endure and ignore those signs and red flags that you see in the early stages of the relationship.
Talk a little bit, you just said a word, endure. Talk about enduring a relationship that's not for you. For your own selfish reasons. Talk about the endurance that it takes. What are men and women willing to do? What are they willing to endure?
Well, I can only speak from the standpoint of a woman.
Speak on it.
So, as women, as mothers, we want to give our kids maybe a life that we didn't have. 2 parents.
Nice.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
So, you start seeing, okay, you've become a parent with this person. You're co-parenting, whether it's 1 child, 2 children, whatever the number.
Okay.
And you see things that are off. You have disagreements. You see that you have different ways in raising children. But for the sake of the kids, some women are more than likely willing to endure the bullshit with that man, whether he be lazy or just whatever it is.
So let me ask you this. In the journey of endurance, are you enduring that for the kids, or are you enduring that for yourself?
Now, everyone's different.
We know that. It's
Everyone's different. But I would say for me, in the past, I can only speak for me.
Or in general.
But I'm opening up for myself. I feel it helps the listeners to know my point of view, where I'm coming from as a woman, so they can relate to me more. But I was willing to endure for my children's sake.
It wasn't for your sake.
It wasn't for my sake because, 1, I wasn't married.
Okay.
I didn't have the desire to marry this person. But I was raised by a single mother. So if I could give my kids their dad and mom, I was willing to endure for as long as I could.
Wow.
And that was dealing with bullshit. And when I say dealing with bullshit, not to harp on it, but it was...
whatever it is.
Yeah, it was just things that when it got to the end point where the frustration was like, no more, I don't give a damn what I have to do to get out of this relationship, I was done.
So let me ask you this. In that journey, what was your participation in that journey? What was your accountability for yourself in spite of all the external things?
My accountability in the relationship.
Wow.
I began to, because it lacked what I felt, or that person lacked to me, what I felt a man should be in a relationship. I then began to try to control the relationship. If it's not going to go that way, then it's going to go this way. And that was where I held, I was accountable.
You were accountable. Because as you know, when I talk about love, life, and relationships, I always say you are what you attract. So could it be at that point in your life, you were what you attracted, and you just hadn't got to the point where you were able to evolve or self-analyze who and what you were so that you wouldn't attract what you attracted?
I'm going to tell you something, and I don't know how many people really believe in getting what you ask for, but at that time in my life, and I remember this clearly, I felt like I wanted to be that black woman who could save a black man. So I remember asking, if I had a black man, I would stand by his side, I'd be willing to help him, and we could work together as a team moving forward. And I so strongly believed that when I saw the signs or things about this man that was off,
that you could improve, help, and support.
Yes, that's it. Ding, ding, ding. I felt that I could. No, you know what? I could work with him. I can motivate him. I can be supportive where he lacks.
Phoenix, listen, to all the ladies and the fellas out there, she just dropped the bomb. Now let me give you the other side of that coin. As a man, I've been in the same situation. So I've been on the other side of that, where I've met a woman who I've said the same thing. Okay, she has some family values. She respects fatherhood. I can work with that.
Opposed to the things that you saw that were a bit off.
Opposed to all the red flags that I saw in the beginning. I was exactly like you were in your situation. I was saying the same exact thing to myself. Okay, I can work with her. She appears to have a good heart. She seems to not be crazy. She has her mama and her daddy in her life.
So she's stable.
Appears.
She appears to be.
Appears to be stable.
Yes, and family oriented.
Ooh, and family oriented because of the past trauma of being in situations that were not conducive to family.
Right. And you were trying to make up for what you lost in the past. Is that right?
It was a coping mechanism for my trauma that I did not deal with in the mirror.
Wow.
I'm going to say it again.
Say it for the listeners.
It was the trauma that I was not dealing with in the mirror, and it became a coping mechanism which allowed this individual who was not and could not be for me, because I met them in a situation where I was using that person as a coping mechanism.
Wow. Wow.
So This is another reason why we have these conversations, Phoenix, because we want men and women to understand that until you unpack and deal with your own personal trauma, you cannot attract the right mate.
That's right.
Under no circumstance. Whether you believe that you're at the best place in your life, if you have not dealt with any trauma or anything that's going on in your life, you will continue to attract whatever issues you have. That's what relationships are. Your partner in relationships is there to expose what your issues are.
I agree.
Not as a coping mechanism. And that's how we typically meet and relate to each other. Because we get with each other based on
Our needs.
ooh, say it again.
Our needs.
And needs and the opposite of what we just got finished with. I just got finished with an asshole. So guess what? The next person can't be an asshole.
They have to be far from.
They have to be far from an asshole.
Right.
Not realizing you are what you attract. And this is why we have these discussions.
And I'd like to add something else. Something that we've talked about before in the past about men. And when women meet men, we're always willing to be open to tell you about our past, with our past relationship.
How come? Because you don't want what you had, right?
Right.
Talk about it.
As we do that, as we open up about our past relationship, men who are hunters,
Which is most of us.
most of you, use the flaws that that previous person had and make sure they do show you the opposite. So they're wolves in sheep's clothing.
Ooh, say that again, Phoenix.
They are wolves in sheep's clothing.
What do they do?
Clothing.
They use what?
The flaws from the past relationship. And, oh, your husband was a liar? Oh, I don't like that. I am completely honest. They put on the front to be the opposite of what you've had in the past to make themselves seem like the right one.
Wow.
Would you agree?
Listen, I've been preaching that and bringing those points up for the longest.
Yes, you have.
But I'm glad that you're speaking on it and recognize that as men, that's what we do.
And this is to help the younger women or any woman. Listen, don't be so open to tell what you've had in the past and what you are not looking for. Try to see what that person themselves has to bring to the table, and then you can decipher if this is right for me or not.
And see, for my ladies, I always say, understand a man's character, not his characteristics.
Say that again and define that.
Understand a man's character and not his characteristics. So, if I was to ask you, Phoenix, right? What speaks louder from a man? Words or actions?
Actions.
And what's the root word of action?
Act.
And that's what men do. We act. You see that?
Yeah.
Women are always going actions. Actions? We act. We're performers.
All the time.
All the time. So I always say, forget about his actions. Look at his character. Character speaks way louder
That's right.
than actions.
That is so true.
Because we'll act
All day long.
all day long.
All right. So we've covered a good amount of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So in moving forward, once the relationship goes completely sour, what are you left with?
Wow. So I would say this, if you've been in a relationship, long-term relationship, that seems to not have worked out for you, my advice is simply this. Blame versus accountability. I'm going to say it again. Blame versus accountability.
And what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is most of us, when we're in these long-term relationships or whatever that didn't work out, you got kids, you're married, divorced, engaged. I'm covering all bases.
Aspects, right.
All aspects. We, men and women, we tend to blame our partner. Because that's the easy way out of the situation. But I always reel it back in to say accountability. What was your 50% in that relationship that didn't work? Whatever that is, if you can take accountability, you can look yourself in the mirror and honestly say what you contributed to
The failure of the relationship.
the failure of the relationship. And not only acknowledge it, take accountability for it, but why don't we self-analyze? Figure out where the root of that issue came from. Deal with it. Acknowledge it. Self-analyze it before you go out and try to start the process over again.
Wow. That's a jewel dropper right there. Because unless you unpack it and deal with it, like you said, you're just going to be bringing it to the next relationship. And it's going to be an ongoing failure.
You know what it's like, Phoenix? It's like you have a knapsack on your back with all the bullshit from all your relationships. That knapsack is on your back, and you carry it from relationship to relationship. And if you don't unpack it, deal with it. Deal with the family trauma. Deal with the issues that you have. Deal with the insecurities. You're going to carry that knapsack from relationship to relationship if we, as men and women, don't unpack that knapsack full of trauma, insecurities, and just a whole bunch of bullshit that we've put in that knapsack. If we don't unpack it, we're doomed to fail as men and women relating to each other as human beings.
Wow. I so agree with that. And that's well said. Well said.
So, go out there, look yourselves in the mirror, unpack your bullshit, and in closing, as I always say, the only thing I know is what I don't know. My goal is to challenge your beliefs and expectations in relationships. Check me out on IG. That's Brooklyn's Own, the number 1, BKLYNSOWN, the number 1. And I'm out.